Before starting this story, I must warn you. What I am about to tell you has haunted me for 15 years. Some nights, I still wake up in a cold sweat, convinced I can hear those whispers. Yesterday, after all these years of silence, I received a package. Inside, my old Parker pen, the one that disappeared that night, accompanied by a photo of me, taken yesterday, while I was sleeping. The summer of 2008 was supposed to be like any other. I was the kind of teenager who preferred books to parties. My group consisted of 3 people: Greg, the geek obsessed with video games; Jay, the introverted artist; and Mark. Mark was different. He had arrived mid-year, mysterious and charismatic. He had this way of looking at you, as if he could read you. I still remember our first conversation. He knew details about me that I had never shared. Greg's proposal came out of nowhere. His family owned a house on an island in Maine, but he had never mentioned it before. "My dad insists we go," he said, avoiding my gaze. "He says it's important." The car ride was strange. Greg's father, usually jovial, remained silent, his eyes constantly fixed on the rearview mirror. Every time I caught his gaze, he murmured something inaudible. Mark, sitting next to me, was frantically scribbling in his notebook, his drawings. I only caught glimpses, but it was enough to make me nauseous. The island seemed frozen in another era. The locals stared at us with stiff smiles like wax masks. An old woman grabbed my arm at the local store. "He's watching you, boy. He's waiting for his moment." When I asked who she was talking about, she pretended not to understand English. The house. How can I describe the feeling? It was as if it was breathing. The walls seemed to pulse slightly at night. The air was thicker in certain spots, as if something invisible was occupying the space. The mirrors reflected shadows that didn't exist. The disappearances started slowly. First, my Barcelona cap, a gift from my late father. Then, my Parker pen, the last keepsake from my grandmother. Each loss felt physically painful, as if a piece of my soul was being torn away. The nights became unbearable. The whispers. At first, I thought it was the wind, but they formed words, my name, over and over, distorted, sung, spat. They came from Mark's bed, but when I turned on the light, he was sleeping deeply. Too deeply. One night, I saw him. Mark was standing in front of the second-floor window, motionless like a statue. His body seemed longer, distorted. When he turned toward me, his face. It was no longer a human face, just a mass of twisted features, like a child's nightmarish drawing. Fear paralyzed me, but I had to know. While the others were out in town, I searched his belongings. Under his bed, a smell of rot. In his bag, my objects arranged in a circle around photos of me sleeping. Photos taken in my room, at home, weeks before the trip. The notebook was different from what I imagined. Bound in leather, the pages seemed to vibrate under my fingers. The first drawings were methodical, detailed anatomical studies of my face, my body. Then they became darker, me dismembered in dozens of different ways, each drawing more realistic than the last, as if the artist was improving with practice. Between the drawings, notes, meticulous observations of my habits, my fears, my weaknesses. He cries in his sleep every 3 days. The scar on his left wrist, potential weak point. The blood has a beautiful color when fresh. The last page. My name written hundreds of times, carved deeper and deeper into the paper. In the center, a drawing of me, smiling, with photographic precision. Beneath the drawing, these words: "Tonight, I finish my masterpiece. His face will be perfect in my collection." What happened next is blurry. Greg's father bursting into the room, his face pale as a sheet. "He chose you," he murmured, "like the others." The police discovering a hidden compartment under Mark's bedroom floor. Pieces of faces preserved in formaldehyde. Diaries of other victims. Mark had disappeared, like a nightmare upon waking. The package yesterday contained more than my pen. There was also a USB drive. Inside, thousands of photos of me, taken over 15 years, sleeping, working, living. And one last photo taken just an hour ago of me writing this story. In the reflection of my screen, I can see a figure standing behind me,